In the collection of the National Gallery is a marvelous landscape painting by a Bolognese painter called Annibale Carracci. You're standing here at the edge of a forest looking over this watery, swampy landscape towards a distant city, the other side of a lake. A boating party passes by. You're inside a kind of rustic paradise on a lovely summer day that you're brought so directly into the landscape. And that creates the feeling on our part that he must have been walking around and looking around a spot very similar to the one that he shows us. You start wondering how they managed to affect such an atmosphere. And one of the things scholars have always felt, and is undoubtedly true, is that these landscape paintings were prepared by sketches out of doors, that the artists would go out and walk around their cities, in this case Bologna, and sketch, look at the landscape, sketch it, make little notations on paper of what they saw, what struck them. Landscape was not a great way for a painter to make a reputation for himself. You needed to do religious or mythological art. But the pleasure derived from drawing landscape and being in the landscape speaks very loudly from the many, many drawings made by Annibale and his fellow painters of the Carracci Academy. One of the drawings in the National Gallery's collection is actually also a river landscape with a very similar composition to the one that Annibale painted. It's by his older brother Agostino. It's this one with 3 big trees on the edge of a river, a body of water, where we see a little boating party, and the other side a little cabin, some more woods and trees and woods. So it shows a very similar scene to the one painted by Annibale, but to a very different effect. It's a little earlier. Probably this drawing was made in, say, 1585, 87, and Annibale's picture is about 1590. And what I find interesting is how Annibale has taken the step of cutting off the tops of the trees and bringing you that much closer in. That's really where you start feeling the intimacy, the contact with nature. Because Agostino makes a beautiful drawing, very detailed, very precise and lovingly executed, with a lot of feeling for the way the trees grow and which the foliage of their branches behaves in a little breeze. But it is not a landscape that allows the spectator to cross the boundary and step into nature. The river landscape is one of the rare painted landscapes by Annibale Carracci, but there are many, many drawings by him and by his circle, and he continued drawing landscapes all through his life. Not that many survive, but the gallery has a small and very remarkable sketch that shows, again, a river, an estuary, with a sailboat with some people in front, maybe in a boat getting ready to move out onto the water, and a building on the other side that looks like it has some sort of tunnel or opening for boats to go into, because you see a small man in a rowboat disappearing into this dark tunnel. It's a very small drawing. It's just 18 centimeters wide, 10, 11 high. It's drawn in a very summary, rapid manner, whereas in the Agostino drawing of 20 years before, 10, 15 years before, you could see almost every leaf in the tree and you could follow the way the branches are developed. Annibale, in this late drawing, is much more succinct. He makes a few squiggles with a little pen, with a quill, and suggests rather than shows a tree or a boat. You can see the sail of the sailing boat is just 3 lines that make it into a billowing sail with incredible assurance and a power of suggestion. One thing we have to remember when looking at drawings like these in a museum context is that, of course, the experience we have of them is very different from the one that the artists ever considered. These drawings, on the whole, were not made to be seen by anyone else but the draftsman himself and his immediate circle, his students. There's a marvelous anecdote told by the biographer of the Carracci brothers, Malvasia, that there was a drawing which had an inscription on it saying, "I grabbed this sheet out of the hands of Agostino Carracci, who was about to wipe the frying pan with it." And that sort of context is something we need to remember when we look at these beautifully preserved, unique works of art.